What right does the British government have to protect its citizens from potential murderers entering the country? It's Lessons for Life 24/7, and once again I have Triple T on the line. Triple T, are you there?
Yes, I am, and thank you for having me on your show.
Thank you very much. Welcome as always, and welcome back. I felt we needed to do a follow-up to our conversation about SHAMIMA Begum.
The clarification from the last video, if you don't mind, I would like to say that I live here in South Africa, and in South Africa we have different rules. When people come into our house uninvited and they come in to attack us, we have a law here that says that we have the right to kill them when they trespass without any ramifications whatsoever. Now, when I said we chop off, I will chop off your head off. So this is just allegorical language. I'm a pacifist. I don't believe in this, but we have rules in this land that say that we have the right to kill the person if he comes into our house. I know you don't have that over in UK, but here, that's the law. That was my reference regarding that, which I didn't clarify as well as I should have. This is the law that we have. And I also made a mistake in if I may very quickly, sex slaves. I have one of those vivid memories, and I heard Anjam Chowdhury 10 years ago probably say on Sean Hannity's show, Sean, tell me where the sex slaves are not present, they are not there, this is all made up. And even on Sky News, they said that the problem isn't as exacerbated as they once thought. So that does not really confer with today. Today we know that there's a problem, and unfortunately, me, somebody who doesn't watch the news, I took and extrapolated that information and had it present from that time, which was completely wrong of me. They are sex slaves. After a bit of research, I realized out there in ISIS, and I think that it's time that we spoke against any injustice, doesn't matter who it's for, who it's for.
Okay, so we're acknowledging that ISIS are capturing sex slaves. We're acknowledging that they're committing various other crimes. Members of ISIS or militants who have committed atrocities on British soil have said that they have done so on behalf of Islamic State. For example, the Manchester bombing. So Islamic State have murdered British citizens. You've said that as an individual, if someone enters your house to attack you, you have the right to kill that person in self-defense. What right does the British government have to protect its citizens from potential murderers entering the country, never mind entering the house? This is a person who's joined a terrorist organisation who have already killed British citizens. Doesn't the country have the right and the duty to protect its own citizens?
It does, and it is the responsibility, and unfortunately the government has been failing with this person in question, which was responsible for the bombing up in Manchester. He was on the watch list of the MI5 for a very, very long time, and unfortunately they didn't act when they should have, and sadly we lost many.
We'll have to research it. Did that individual have connections to Libya?
Well, if Libya or if ISIS, if they claim that they sent this bomber and they trained him and so on, then we don't know really. But he had connections with terrorists.
From what I recall, he was of a Libyan background. He may have spent time in Libya fighting, or perhaps his family had. For argument's sake, had he been in Libya fighting the jihad over there and then been prevented from re-entering the UK by having his passport revoked, his citizenship removed, we might have saved lives in Manchester. What price can you put on a life? human rights are all well and good, but what would you do to save a life? To save a life, you can take a life. And taking away a passport is nothing compared to taking a life. We're not saying kill this individual. We're not saying give her capital punishment. We're just saying do whatever it takes to prevent terror on our streets. If that means removing her passport, so be it.
If the Libyan person in question was responsible for the loss of life, loss of innocent life in Libya, they should not have allowed him back in the country. If they did, they should have monitored him, which I guess they were doing, but to more of a stringent level that could have precluded any death of any sort. And I suppose that was their plan. There's a lot more that takes place in the MI5 meeting rooms than you and I know about. But unfortunately, it was one of those tragic mistakes that they made, and sadly, we lost many lives. Regarding Shamima Begum and her being allowed into this country, for me, if she was a white woman, if she was of Catholic persuasion, even then, and if she was held somewhere in one of the Catholic countries and she wished to return to England, I would still be supporting her return, because she would have been a 15-year-old, which is a school kid. And alongside being a school kid, she was groomed. And we have to show mercy, and that's one of the great things about
we can't risk lives in order to be nice, can we? We can't put human rights ahead of human life.
I agree with you, but in this case, she didn't kill anyone out there. She did nothing of that nature. She merely was groomed. She went out there. She left her family. And I think she's more valuable to us here in this country than she is in a refugee camp. We need to learn how she went there, who were the people who groomed her, and who she met, and what can she tell us about this very secretive organization, namely IS.
So last time we spoke, you were arguing for her to be allowed to return to the UK. Would you be happy with her returning and being interrogated, possibly imprisoned? I mean, what are you hoping for? What's the ideal outcome in this situation?
She should be back in this country, and she should be monitored. And before she is set out in the public, she should be de-radicalized.
If she is a Bengali citizen, or has the right to Bengali citizenship, why not send her to Bangladesh? Why do we owe her ahead of Bangladesh?
Firstly, she's not from Bangladesh. She's from England. She's from a
Bangladeshi background, and because of that, she has entitlement to a Bangladeshi passport. If she wanted to have one, she could be granted it.
On the contrary, it's very difficult to be able to obtain a Bangladeshi passport. I too come from that type of region, and I have attempted to receive a passport. It's not as easy as it seems.
But she is entitled to Bangladeshi nationality, and from what I understand, if she hasn't opted to take the Bangladeshi nationality by the time she's 21, then that window of opportunity will have closed. But people born to parents from Bangladesh have the entitlement to Bangladeshi nationality, just as her child born to someone with a British nationality will have the rights to British nationality and a British passport.
If we started sending people to where their grandparents or parents came from, then that's a bit like the 1920s. And I think we're going backwards, 100 years backwards, rather than going
forward. What else can we do to prevent terrorists entering our country? Shouldn't we use every weapon that we have?
Yeah, we should, but in this case, she's
luckily for us, she's Bangladeshi.
Well, I'll say this once and once only. I'll repeat myself, and I'll say that she is not a terrorist. She was groomed. A young 15-year-old was almost abducted in a way, and she was in that land for the last 4 years or so. Now, she didn't kill anyone when she was there. She didn't do anything. She didn't blow anything up. She didn't encourage terrorism. She knew of beheadings, but she also knew that that's the law. Now, those beheadings, were they, I guess, capital punishment of that law? Were those people that they beheaded, were they murderers or were they innocent people? What was going on? We have no idea of verifying that. But she didn't partake in any killing of any sort. She never supported the death of innocent people anywhere, as far as I know. So therefore, she is not a terrorist.
People are regularly beheaded in Saudi Arabia, and there's no punishment for visiting Saudi Arabia. A Saudi journalist was beheaded in the Saudi embassy in Turkey by Saudi agents, and no one had their passport revoked because of that. So as usual, there's a double standard going on. I think it's also very hypocritical, as I mentioned last time, that there have been many factions in the Syrian conflict who carry out acts such as beheadings, bombings, and murder of civilians. And I think ISIS has been demonized because ISIS have been used as a legitimization of American and UK troops entering Syria and Western boots on the ground in Syria. Do you see what I'm getting at with that point?
Yes, sir. Jamal Khashoggi is sadly no longer with us. He was literally chopped up into many pieces and carried out. And if the government truly were intent on stopping terrorism, they would go over to the Crown Prince Salman, or Bin Salman, and say to him, "How dare you do this? Stay away from us." Instead,
he's welcome in the UK anytime.
And he's welcome not only into the UK, but into Buckingham Palace and into every major part, institution of our country.
And on the point of ISIS being demonized, do you think it's relevant that ISIS became a reason that we invaded that country? Because initially it was all about Bashar al-Assad. Assad is bad. Assad is butchering his own people. That's the reason that we need to invade that country. We were on the verge of invading Syria, and the motion didn't get past Parliament. Our country and America were arming, backing, aiding Islamist so-called rebels the whole while. And at some point, ISIS became the extreme version of Al-Qaeda that we couldn't possibly have toppling Bashar al-Assad. So they went from being one of the groups that might help to topple Bashar al-Assad, which was the original goal of the Western powers, to being a group on the ground that we need to invade in order to prevent them taking power, because they're even worse than Bashar al-Assad. And that's why I think this case is being used to reiterate the demonization of ISIS, to legitimize British and American forces being present in Syria. Because initially, the Western powers and ISIS had the same goal, which was to topple the secular Arab nationalist Bashar al-Assad and his government.
The tragedy here is, either way, we have now lost so many innocent lives. And that's the real painful thing, that the people who make these decisions, they don't really concern themselves with the loss of life. And we're talking hundreds of thousands, we're talking hundreds of thousands even in Afghanistan, alongside Yemen, alongside Iraq, 1 million, 1.2 million according to the Johns Hopkins University, are now dead. And the people who made these decisions are mainly seated in their comfy chairs in the House of Parliament on a daily and on regular basis. So it's a tragedy on so many grounds. I don't know where to begin to unravel this.
The story continues. Triple T, as always, thank you very much for getting in touch. We appreciate your time and hope we do it again soon.
Thank you.